new details, really, no new evidence. So where are we this morning?
Well, you know, despite this big circus of a hearing, it didn't advance the ball in terms of providing, oh my gosh, he certainly did it, or anything that would suggest that you can't trust anything this woman said, you know, other than the fact she had no corroborating evidence and no one supported her. But of course, we knew that the day before the hearing, and we didn't have need a hearing to know what we now know today, which is why his case is, or his confirmation is going to go to a vote later today. Because nothing new happened yesterday other than the circus. And I'm glad the Republicans are shutting the circus down. I don't think they'd move to the committee vote if they didn't think they had the votes to move them out of committee and ultimately to confirmation. So despite the torture, and it was torture, and it was really unethical what the Senate Democrats put him through in league with their leftist allies, it looks like Judge Kavanaugh will be the next Supreme Court justice by the middle of next week.
Now, Tom, you were in the room. We can sit here on the couch and talk about this, but we weren't actually in the room. What was it like to be in the room when Lindsey Graham made those statements?
Oh, it was high drama. I could see Senator Graham, even before that, was reacting quite strongly. You're sitting there, you could see him almost popping out of his chair in response to some of what was going on. And going back to the beginning of the hearing before Dr. Ford testified, guys, that tension in that room was incredible. And you could cut it with a knife. And everyone was paying very close attention to what she said. And then later in the day, Judge Kavanaugh came in and defended himself quite ably and went at the hearing, set the senators there from the Democratic side quite directly. And you don't necessarily get that from the cameras. But they were held to account. And I have to say, I thought the Democrats had the advantage even through Judge Kavanaugh's opening testimony. It was dramatic, but the Democrats lost when they began opening their mouths questioning him because the veil was lifted. You could see they were dishonest.
FBI.
One of the worst things was having, I forget who was questioning him about the yearbook, but they had these giant posters of his yearbook, and you just saw the absurdity. And
Senator Whitehouse.
All the credibility that they thought they had just went out the door when you have this poor man's yearbook being raised as if it was a piece of evidence against him. It was absurd.
Tom, the whole thing was this. You want to believe Ford, or you want to talk about Kavanaugh's authenticity? Well, if Ford wanted to keep her anonymity, that was thrown in the street against her will, if we're to believe what we hear, because Dianne Feinstein had it, held it, and suddenly it's out there. Why was it out there? Why was her name released? She could have been anonymous. We could have got to the bottom of this. In one-on-one sessions, they could have got these allegations out, but they didn't do it. So here's Senator Dianne Feinstein denying that she leaked the letter.
Mr. Chairman, let me be clear. I did not hide Dr. Ford's allegations. I did not leak her story. She asked me to hold it confidential, and I kept it confidential as she asked. She apparently was stalked by the press, felt that what happened, she was forced to come forward, and her greatest fear was realized. She's been harassed, she's had death threats, and she's had to flee her home.
But why was she stalked by the press? Because her name leaked out.
Through the Democratic side of the aisle there. So, you know, what I think came out yesterday was Senator Feinstein's corrupt operation, where they withheld the fact that they knew about these allegations while they were questioning Judge Kavanaugh, so they knew they had this here. They could have asked the FBI to do a quick interview weeks ago. And on top of that, Feinstein's staff is recommending her lawyers, further undermining her credibility to the detriment of the accuser. So the corruption of the Democratic side here was exposed. And, you know, we have to remember they were also pushing out these false allegations that came out subsequently against Judge Kavanaugh that were absurd on their face, and I'm not going to repeat them because they don't deserve repetition. This man has had his reputation dragged through the mud enough. Again, The Democrats lost yesterday, thankfully, not because anyone opposes them in a partisan way. It's because this process would have ruined the Senate if it was allowed to go through the way they wanted to go through, which is to raise allegations without evidence. This woman may believe what she said she believes, and you can believe her, and you can have sympathy for her. But it isn't enough to derail this man's nomination, destroy his reputation. And this is why it should have been held privately, because you could have evaluated her and said, you know what, we appreciate you believe that happened 35 years ago. There's not evidence here to derail his nomination. And in fact, we're not going to torture you by making you go through a public recitation of what happened here, or we're not going to torture him. Instead, both were abused, and the Senate owes Judge Kavanaugh an apology. The best apology would be confirm him as quickly as possible, though.
See what Jeff Flake does.
Let's see
Susan Collins and
what
Susan
the vote is this morning.
McCarthy.
All right. Tom, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Joining
Tom.
us from Judicial Watch.
He's the chairman of the American Conservative Union, also a friend of Judge Kavanaugh, Matt Schlapp, and Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi. Pam, let me start with the law and the investigation. No conclusions, no recommendations. Joe Biden was right in 1991. Here's the question. We don't have a place. We don't have a location. We have Professor Ford naming 4 people that were at this alleged event. All 4 people, under the penalty of perjury, have given sworn statements. Now, beyond asking them the same questions that the Senate Judiciary Committee investigative team asked, help me out, is there any other possible thing that the FBI can do except ask those 4 people? There's no place to go. What can they do?
Well, and again, like you said, they've already given statements under the penalty of perjury. They're all saying they will talk to the FBI. I would deploy countless FBI agents tomorrow morning and get this thing done. Get them locked in FBI statements, bring them back to the Senate Judiciary Committee, because, Sean, I've never in my career as a prosecutor seen anything like this. My job is also to protect the rights of the accused as a prosecutor, and a criminal murder defendant in a courtroom charged with murder would be treated more fairly and with more respect than Brett Kavanaugh was treated by the Senate Judiciary Committee. And that committee is one of the oldest committees and was formed to handle constitutional issues. So those people need to go back and read the preamble to the Constitution. They need to read the 5th Amendment, the 6th Amendment, the rights of the accused. They need to go talk to the ACLU. Because everything about Judge Kavanaugh, he had to come in there as a guilty person and prove his innocence. And I've never seen anything like it in my career.
Matt, let me start with something. I've been very critical of Republicans when they don't keep their promises and they don't live up to their word and they do stupid things. To their credit, for the most part, I think today was really dumb on the part of a few. But for the most part, they have handled this with the proper seriousness it deserves. And Professor Ford needed to be heard. And I like the president for 2 weeks. He has said, I'm going to let the Senate handle this. He made his comments. He's standing by the judge. He said nice things about Professor Ford in as much as she seemed very critical in ways, and which I thought was, they're treating this with the respect it deserves. But the Democrats, if the FBI can't make conclusions and they can't make recommendations and there's no evidence to look at, it's just the 4 witnesses again that already, again, have sworn statements under the threat of perjury, a felony. What else is there to do for the FBI, and how long should that take? Why couldn't that be done tomorrow?
Immediately, the Attorney General is exactly right. Send the agents out from one of the California offices and sit down with Mrs. Ford. Look, all this is political cover. I'm not minimizing the fact that these are serious allegations. All I'm saying is that when they opened up the FBI investigation on Clarence Thomas so many years ago, it was just about cover, and the Democrats know it, and they thought they had the Republicans by just chiming and ringing this bell. We need to have an FBI an opening of the FBI check. So look, we're here. They're going to do it. It'll be excruciating for Judge Kavanaugh. I'm sure the Democrats, with their coordinated attack, will come out with more information about more ridiculousness this week. And I think in the end,
the leader McConnell, is going to have to force a vote, and these Republicans are going to have to choose.
Mitch McConnell, everyone was gone. He's already opened up the debate on the confirmation as
That's right.
Called the vote to order. Nobody objected because only one person was there. And so that will move forward.
On voice vote, that's right.
What about, we have the attorney, the one attorney for Professor Ford, Pam, that didn't believe Paula Jones would think it was that bad, and it was only 10 or 12 minutes, she said, and that's not really hostile work environment, wow, and then defended Al Franken. That's the one that Dianne Feinstein apparently recommended. Right. They're saying they don't want artificial deadlines here. The FBI should be able to do this, I would imagine. Let's say they spend 8 hours with every person, send one agent to each person, 2 agents to each person. It could be done tomorrow.
That's right.
That's what I said. You should deploy all the FBI agents. Go out there, take these interviews tomorrow morning. I think all these folks want to get it over with. Talk to her friend Leland, who I think is going to be the strongest witness for Brett Kavanaugh. And I think those diaries are critically important because they were taken in 1982. It's a miracle he had them in real time.
So the only hope for the Democrats, except that they have something else planned, is that under the threat of a felony, somebody admits, oh, I got it wrong and I committed a felony the last time. The hope is that one of the 4 committed a felony.
This whole party, remember, it never happened. They're not even just saying what she says is wrong. They don't have a recollection of any of it. It's made up out of whole cloth.
Could we bring up an investigation? Are they going to call for an FBI investigation now into Keith Ellison and Bill Clinton?
They better, especially
will.
Keith Ellison right now. They
Dianne
better.
Feinstein, where's the FBI, your call for an FBI investigation into them? Or is
if
this
she
just
was
politics?
a prosecutor, Sean, she would be held in contempt of court.
You mean? There's not
going to happen.
No.
Sorry.
Speaks volumes, doesn't it? Thank you both.
This committee used to do. Strom Thurmond voted for Ginsburg. You'll never convince me that it was because he agreed with her philosophy. I think he saw in her a qualified person. Fritz Hollings voted for Scalia. The same is true. 96 and 97 votes. What's happened? Most of the nominees to the Supreme Court have never had a hearing. It was always just assumed that they're qualified and they're not hacks, that they're going to go forward. Elections do matter. When it comes to President Trump, elections do matter. Now, about the law, and to my friends who have been prosecutors. I've been a prosecutor, I've been a defense attorney, and I've been a judge. Every woman who's been victimized needs to be heard. Count me in 1,000 times over. Count me in for the proposition for every one woman who comes forward, only God knows how many women and children go to their grave with the abuse. If you don't realize that, you just don't know this area of life. But you're going to be heard in the United States. I had a young man accused of sexual assault when I was in the Air Force as a defense attorney. The case eventually fell apart, and he almost killed himself. I had women who have been gang raped and didn't want to testify, but they did. Along with counselors, I sat up with them all night. Tough stuff. Emotional. Who to believe? I've been doing this legal stuff most of my life. I've never heard a more compelling defense of one's honor and integrity than I did from Brett Kavanaugh. He looked me in the eye, everybody in the eye, and he was mad, and he should have been mad. He could tell you where he was at and what he was doing during high school in a way that just blew me away. Brett Kavanaugh and women. If you're a gang rapist when you're a sophomore and a junior in high school, you don't let it go. Every woman who actually knows Brett Kavanaugh has come forward to say he is not that kind of guy. He has been at the highest level of public service, under tremendous scrutiny, 6 FBI investigations, and we missed the sophomore, junior gang rapist. We didn't miss it. It's much garbage. We're in the twilight zone, and here's what I would say. Miss Ford, all I can say about Miss Ford, I feel sorry for her, and I do believe something happened to her, and I don't know when and where, but I don't believe it was Brett Kavanaugh. And as a prosecutor, you couldn't get out of the batter's box, because in America, before you can accuse somebody of a crime, you have to tell them when it happened and where it happened, and you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt it did happen. The reason this case will never be brought in Maryland or anywhere else, you just can't get there. If you wanted to get a warrant, which is a probable cause standard, to search or arrest somebody, you got to prove by probable cause where it happened and when it happened. How are you supposed to defend yourself? Is the burden really on you to prove that you were not at a party 35 years ago and they won't tell you where it was and when it was?
This is Lindsey Graham off the cuff at the Senate
So all I
Judiciary
can say
live
is that under any reasonable standard, any concept of the rule of law, this would not go forward. There have been 5 allegations here. The 5th allegation was brought to me by Senator Whitehouse, who did absolutely the right thing. Somebody contacted him in Rhode Island and said a friend of his was on a boat with Mark Judge and Brett Kavanaugh, and they treated her badly. He went down and beat him up, and she won't come forward. I said, well, I'll make sure I'll join with you. Let the FBI look at it. And turned out not to be true. The 4th allegation was an anonymous allegation, a letter without a date or a return address sent to Corey Gardner just a few days ago. And he turned it over to the committee, and somebody on that side leaked it to NBC News, and it made it on the news, the 4th allegation. That really bothers me. I don't know what's going on over there, but that's not right. It was somebody
Lindsey Graham
over
at
there.
the Senate Judiciary. I want to go to your phone
Now,
calls. I know you're all on the lines here, and you've been holding for some time. Daniel, Indiana, you wanted to say what? What did you think when you saw Kavanaugh yesterday? What do you think today?
Well, I feel that he was drugged to the mud. I feel that man, how many people, including you and I mean, who can go back to age 17, 36 years ago, and propelled up to today and have 65 women stand up for him and speak of his character and integrity and character, good character. This man has been wrongly run through the mud just because the Democrats hate Trump. Lindsey Graham, I did not like that man in the beginning, but I say God bless him. Thank God he had the brass to speak up and clarify what has been done to Judge Kavanaugh. Mm-hmm. There's been no proof. Even her main witness recanted and said, "No, I don't know Judge or Kavanaugh."
Right. Her friend, her friend Leland said she didn't know Kavanaugh, never been to a party with him, and doesn't remember this event at all. So a lot of people yesterday at the, I was told when the Republicans had their caucus after the hearing last night, when Lindsey Graham walked in, he got a standing ovation. I saw the same thing at Fox in the green room last night. People like crowding around him. He was like Newt Rockney coming back to Notre Dame. It was an amazing reception because of the clarity and I think the pent-up emotion of what Americans were feeling. And though you could sympathize with Brett Kavanaugh,